The November wind howled through the streets of Dusty Ridge like a banshee, carrying with it the promise of the harsh winter to come. Cattle rancher Marcus Thompson pulled his coat tighter as he guided his horse toward the sheriff's office, hoping to settle a dispute about grazing rights before the storm hit in earnest. What he found behind the jail would haunt him for the rest of his life. Huddled against the back wall of the building, trying to find shelter from the biting wind, was a small figure wrapped in nothing more than a thin blanket. As Marcus approached, he realized it was a child, no more than 11 years old. With dark hair matted against his head and lips blue with cold, the boy looked up with hollow, frightened eyes as Marcus dismounted. "Please, mister," the child whispered through chattering teeth, "I ain't doing nothing wrong. I'm just trying to stay warm." Marcus knelt down, his heart breaking at the sight of the small, shivering form. "What's your name, son?" "Benjamin, sir. Benjamin Carter. But most folks just call me Trouble." "Well, Benjamin, what are you doing out here in this cold? Where are your parents?" The boy's eyes filled with tears that he quickly wiped away with the back of his hand. "Ain't got no parents, sir. They died of fever last spring. Sheriff Hawkins says I'm a vagrant and a burden on the town. He won't let me sleep inside anymore." Marcus felt his blood begin to boil. "What do you mean, he won't let you sleep inside?" Benjamin pulled the threadbare blanket tighter around his thin shoulders. "I was sleeping in the jail cell when there weren't no prisoners. It was warm, and I wasn't bothering nobody. But Sheriff Hawkins said orphans don't deserve better than what they can get on their own. He made me sleep outside in the cold 3 nights ago. Says it'll toughen me up or teach me to move along." The wind picked up, and Benjamin began to cough, a harsh, rattling sound that spoke of chest sickness developing. Marcus had seen enough men die of pneumonia on the trail to recognize the early signs. 3 nights, Marcus asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "In this weather?" "Yes, sir. Last night was the worst. I thought I might freeze to death, but I guess the Lord ain't ready for me yet." Marcus stood up, his jaw clenched with righteous fury. No child should have to face such cruelty, especially not from the very person who was supposed to protect the innocent. He helped Benjamin to his feet, noting how the boy swayed with weakness. "Come on, son. Let's go have a talk with Sheriff Hawkins." The sheriff's office was warm and comfortable, a pot-bellied stove radiating heat throughout the room. Sheriff Hawkins looked up from his desk as Marcus entered, with Benjamin trailing behind. The contrast between the warm lawman and the shivering child stark and accusatory. "Well, if it ain't Marcus Thompson," Hawkins said with false joviality. "What brings you to town in this weather, and what are you doing with that little vagrant?" Marcus fought to keep his voice level. "Sheriff, this boy tells me you've been forcing him to sleep outside in this cold. Is that true?" Hawkins shrugged, not seeming to see anything wrong with his actions. "The boy's got no claim on public property. This jail is for criminals, not charity cases. If he wants a warm place to sleep, he can find work and earn it like everyone else." "He's 11 years old," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "What kind of work do you expect a child to find in a town this size? That's not my problem." Hawkins replied coldly, "I've got real responsibilities to attend to. Can't be nursemaiding every stray that wanders into town." Marcus looked down at Benjamin, who stood shivering beside the warm stove, his young face bearing the resigned expression of someone who had learned to expect cruelty from the world. The sight made Marcus's heart ache with memory of his own difficult childhood, his own struggles before he'd managed to build his ranch and create a life of security. "Benjamin," Marcus said gently, "would you like to come stay at my ranch tonight? I've got a warm house, hot food, and a proper bed." The boy's eyes widened with disbelief and desperate hope. "Really, sir, you'd let me stay in your house? More than that, son. You can have my bed. I'll sleep on the couch." Benjamin's thin face crumpled with emotion. "But sir, I ain't got nothing to pay you with. I can't do much work being so small and all." Marcus placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "Benjamin, kindness isn't something you have to pay for. It's something you give freely because it's the right thing to do." Sheriff Hawkins sneered from behind his desk. "You're making a mistake, Thompson. That boy's nothing but trouble. He'll steal you blind and run off first chance he gets." Marcus turned to face Hawkins, his eyes cold as winter steel. "Sheriff, the only mistake I see is a grown man forcing a child to freeze in the street. If that's your idea of law and order, then maybe this town needs to find itself a new sheriff." "You threatening me, rancher?" "I'm stating a fact," Marcus replied calmly. "Come spring, when the territorial elections are held, I'll be making sure every voter in 3 counties knows how you treated this child." The ride to the ranch took an hour through the howling wind and driving snow. Benjamin rode behind Marcus, wrapped in the rancher's own coat, gradually warming against the larger man's back. By the time they reached the Circle T Ranch, the boy had stopped shivering, though he still coughed occasionally. Marcus's housekeeper, Mrs. Rodriguez, took one look at Benjamin and immediately sprang into action. "Dios mío, this poor nego is half frozen. Come to the kitchen. I'll make you some hot soup and get you warm clothes." As Benjamin was fussed over by the kind woman, Marcus prepared his own bedroom for the boy. He changed the sheets, added extra blankets, and built up the fire in the small fireplace that heated the room. When Benjamin appeared, clean and dressed in some of Marcus's old clothes that had been altered to fit, he stared at the comfortable room in amazement. "This is really for me," Benjamin whispered. "All yours, son. The bed's comfortable, there's plenty of blankets, and the fire will keep you warm all night." Benjamin approached the bed slowly, running his small hand over the soft quilt. "I ain't never slept in a real bed before, even when my parents were alive. We just had straw pallets on the floor." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Well, tonight you sleep like a king, Benjamin Carter, and tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." That night, as Marcus settled onto the couch in the main room, he could hear Benjamin coughing less frequently. The warmth and comfort were already beginning to help the boy heal from his exposure to the cold. But more than that, Marcus could sense a change in the child's spirit, a tentative hope that maybe, just maybe, someone in the world actually cared about his welfare. Around midnight, Marcus heard soft footsteps on the stairs. Benjamin appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain and vulnerable in his borrowed nightshirt. "Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry to bother you, but I wanted to say thank you. This is the first time in months that I ain't been cold or scared." Marcus smiled at the boy. "You're welcome, Benjamin, and you don't have to be scared anymore. You're safe here." "Sir, why are you being so kind to me? You don't even know me." Marcus thought about his answer carefully, remembering his own father's words from long ago. "Benjamin, when I was about your age, my family lost our farm to a drought. We had nothing, and we were wandering from town to town looking for work. One night, in weather just like this, a rancher found me sleeping in his barn. Instead of throwing me out, he gave me food, shelter, and eventually a job that changed my whole life." "What happened to him?" "He taught me that when you've been blessed with good fortune, you have a responsibility to help those who haven't been so lucky. That man saved my life. Benjamin, now maybe I can save yours." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, absorbing the weight of Marcus's words. "I'd like to be like that someday. Help other kids who don't have nowhere to go." "I believe you will, son. I believe you will." As Benjamin returned to his warm bed and Marcus settled back onto the couch, both of them slept better than they had in a long time. The boy because he was finally safe and warm, and the man because he had honored the debt of kindness that had shaped his own life outside. The wind continued to howl, but inside the Circle T Ranch, 2 souls had found exactly what they needed. A child had found safety, and a man had found purpose. Subscribe to our channel to see what happens next. Will Marcus find a permanent solution for Benjamin's situation? How will the cruel Sheriff Hawkins react to losing his power over the innocent? Boy, don't miss the next chapter of this heartwarming story of compassion conquering cruelty. Marcus Thompson woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and something he hadn't experienced in his house for years, the sound of quiet humming, coming from the kitchen. Benjamin had been at the ranch for 3 days, and the change in the boy was remarkable. Gone was the frightened, shivering waif Marcus had found behind the jail. In his place was a bright, eager child who insisted on helping with every chore, no matter how small. Benjamin had thrown himself into ranch life with the enthusiasm of someone who had finally found a place where he belonged. "Morning, Mr. Thompson," Benjamin called out as Marcus entered the kitchen. The boy was carefully setting the table while Mrs. Rodriguez cooked breakfast, his movements precise and purposeful. "Mrs. Rodriguez taught me how to make coffee the way you like it." Marcus accepted the cup with a smile, noting how Benjamin's face glowed with pride at being able to contribute something useful. "Thank you, son. How did you sleep?" "Best I ever have in my whole life," Benjamin replied honestly. "That bed is softer than clouds, I reckon." Over breakfast, Marcus watched Benjamin eat with genuine appetite for the first time since he'd arrived. The boy's hollow cheeks were already beginning to fill out, and his persistent cough had improved dramatically with warmth, good food, and rest. "Benjamin," Marcus said carefully, "we need to talk about your situation, what you want for the future." The boy's fork paused halfway to his mouth, fear flickering in his eyes. "Are you sending me back to town, sir? Back to Sheriff Hawkins?" "Not if I can help it," Marcus assured him quickly. "But we need to make this arrangement legal and proper. I'd like to become your guardian, Benjamin. Make you a permanent part of this family." Benjamin's eyes filled with tears of joy and disbelief. "You mean it? You'd really want me to stay forever, forever and a day, son? If you'll have an old bachelor rancher for a father." The happiness that transformed Benjamin's face was worth more to Marcus than all the cattle in Texas. But their celebration was interrupted by the sound of horses approaching the house. Through the window, Marcus saw Sheriff Hawkins riding up, with two other men, their faces set with grim determination. "Stay inside," Marcus told Benjamin and Mrs. Rodriguez as he stepped out onto the porch. "Thompson," Hawkins called out, not bothering to dismount, "I'm here on official business. That boy you took is wanted for questioning in connection with some missing supplies from the general store." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "What supplies?" "Food items. Bread, dried meat, some canned goods. Store owner says they've been disappearing, and that vagrant was seen hanging around the back of the store several times." "Were you going to feed him, Sheriff?" Marcus asked quietly. "Were you going to make sure a hungry child had something to eat?" "That's not the point," Hawkins snapped. "Theft is theft, regardless of age. I'm taking him back to town for questioning." Marcus stepped down from the porch, his hand resting casually near his gun belt. "You're not taking him anywhere, Sheriff. That boy stays right here. You're interfering with official business, Thompson." "I'm protecting a child from a corrupt lawman," Marcus replied calmly. "Benjamin told me about those supplies, Sheriff. He took food because he was starving, because you forced him to sleep in the cold without proper meals. Any judge in the territory would call that survival, not theft." One of the men with Hawkins, whom Marcus recognized as Deputy Miller, shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "Sheriff, maybe we should just shut up, Miller," Hawkins snarled. Then to Marcus, "You got no legal right to that boy. He's a ward of the county, and I'm responsible for his welfare." "Welfare?" Marcus's voice rose with controlled anger. "You call forcing an 11-year-old child to sleep outside in freezing weather welfare? You call letting him starve welfare?" Behind them, the front door opened quietly, and Benjamin stepped out onto the porch despite Marcus's instructions to stay inside. His young voice carried clearly in the cold air. "Sheriff Hawkins," Benjamin said, his voice steady despite his obvious fear. "I did take those supplies from Mr. Garrett's store, but I only took what I needed to keep from starving, and I always meant to pay him back someday when I could." Hawkins smiled with cruel satisfaction. "There's your confession, Thompson. Boy's a thief, plain and simple." But Benjamin wasn't finished. "I was hungry because you wouldn't let me work for food like I asked. I was cold because you made me sleep outside, even when the jail was empty. I was scared because you told me I was worthless and that nobody would ever want me." Deputy Miller and the third man exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with what they were hearing. Marcus could see doubt creeping into their expressions. As Benjamin continued, "Mr. Thompson didn't just give me food and shelter," Benjamin said, his voice growing stronger. "He gave me hope. He made me feel like maybe I was worth something after all, like maybe I deserved kindness instead of cruelty." "Enough of this nonsense," Hawkins growled, dismounting from his horse. "Boy, you're coming with me right now." That's when Marcus stepped between Hawkins and Benjamin, his stance making it clear that the sheriff would have to go through him to reach the child. "Sheriff," Marcus said quietly, "I think you need to leave my property. Now, this isn't over." Thompson, "No, it isn't," Marcus agreed. "Because tomorrow I'm riding to the territorial capital to file formal guardianship papers. And while I'm there, I'll be filing a complaint with the territorial marshal about your treatment of this child." As Hawkins and his men rode away, Deputy Miller lagged behind for a moment. "Mr. Thompson," he called out quietly, "for what it's worth, I never agreed with how he treated the boy." "None of us did." Marcus nodded grimly. "Then maybe it's time some of you spoke up, Deputy." That evening, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Benjamin looked thoughtful and troubled. "Mr. Thompson, did I do wrong by taking that food?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. "Benjamin, taking something that doesn't belong to you is wrong, yes, but context matters. A starving child taking food to survive is different from someone stealing for greed or meanness. I still feel bad about it." "Good," Marcus said gently. "That tells me you have a strong conscience. Tomorrow, we'll go to town and you can apologize to Mr. Garrett. Maybe work out a way for you to pay him back through chores or labor." Benjamin brightened at the suggestion. "I'd like that. I want to make things right. That's the mark of a good man, son. Not that he never makes mistakes, but that he tries to fix them when he does." A week later, Marcus and Benjamin rode into Dusty Ridge together. Benjamin had spent the morning working in Mr. Garrett's store, organizing inventory and sweeping floors to pay back the value of the food he had taken. The store owner, a kind man with children of his own, had been more than fair about the arrangement. As they prepared to leave town, they encountered a crowd gathered around the sheriff's office. Deputy Miller saw them approaching and walked over. With news that made Marcus smile, "Territorial Marshal came through this morning," Miller said quietly. "Seems there were complaints about Sheriff Hawkins from several sources. He's been relieved of duty pending investigation. I'm acting sheriff until they send a replacement." "What kind of complaints?" Marcus asked. "Abuse of authority, cruelty to citizens, misuse of public resources." "Turns out you weren't the only one bothered by how he treated folks, especially those who couldn't defend themselves." Benjamin looked up at Marcus with wonder. "Does this mean other people won't be treated like I was?" "It means justice sometimes takes time, son, but it usually finds its way in the end." As they rode back to the ranch, Benjamin was unusually quiet. Finally, as the sun began to set behind the mountains, he spoke up. "Mr. Thompson, why do some folks choose to be cruel when they could just as easily choose to be kind?" It was a profound question from such a young person, and Marcus thought about it carefully before responding. "I think some people get hurt so badly that they forget how to be kind. They think the only way to feel strong is to make others feel weak." "Is that what happened to Sheriff Hawkins?" "Maybe, son. Maybe he forgot that real strength comes from protecting people, not hurting them." Benjamin nodded thoughtfully. "I never want to forget that lesson. No matter what happens to me, I want to remember how good it feels when someone chooses kindness." "I believe you will, Benjamin, and I believe you'll spend your life giving that same gift to others." That night, as Benjamin settled into his bed, the warm, comfortable bed that had become truly his, he reflected on how much his life had changed. Just 2 weeks ago, he had been convinced that he was worthless, that nobody would ever care what happened to him. Now he had a father who loved him, a home where he belonged, and most importantly, the knowledge that kindness was a choice everyone could make. He had learned that sometimes the greatest gift you could give another person wasn't money or possessions, but simply the recognition that they mattered, that they deserved warmth and safety and love. Subscribe to our channel to see the powerful conclusion to Benjamin's story. How will this young man use the lessons of kindness he's learned to change other lives? Don't miss the final chapter that shows the lasting impact of choosing compassion over cruelty. 5 years had passed since that cold November night, when Marcus Thompson found 11-year-old Benjamin Carter shivering behind the jail. Now 16, Benjamin had grown into a fine young man, strong in body and gentle in spirit, shaped by the love and security of his adopted home at the Circle T Ranch. The changes in him were remarkable. The hollow-eyed, frightened waif was now a confident teenager who could rope a steer, break a horse, and handle the responsibilities of ranch life with skill and maturity. But more importantly, he had never forgotten the lessons of kindness that had saved his life. It was on a bitter February evening, with snow falling heavily outside, that Benjamin's own moment of testing arrived. He was returning from town after delivering supplies to the general store when he heard a faint crying coming from the direction of the old abandoned church. Following the sound, he discovered a small girl, no more than 8 years old, huddled in the doorway of the building, shivering violently in the freezing air. "Hey there, little one," Benjamin said gently, dismounting from his horse and approaching slowly so as not to frighten her. "What's your name?" The girl looked up with eyes that Benjamin recognized immediately. They held the same desperate fear and hopelessness that he had once carried. "Lucy," she whispered through chattering teeth. "Lucy Morrison. Lucy, what are you doing out here in the cold? Where are your folks?" Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Ma died last month from the fever. Pa, he started drinking real bad after that. Yesterday he said I was too much trouble, that he couldn't take care of me no more. He told me to get out and not come back." Benjamin's heart clenched with painful familiarity. He knelt down beside Lucy, seeing himself 5 years ago in her frightened face. "How long have you been out here, Lucy?" 2 days, I think. I tried to sleep in the church, but the door's locked. I been eating snow to keep from getting too thirsty. And I found some old apples behind the store, but they was mostly rotten." Benjamin immediately shrugged out of his heavy coat and wrapped it around the shivering girl. "Lucy, you're coming home with me. My pa, he'll take good care of you, just like he did for me." "You was like me once?" Lucy asked, her eyes wide with surprise. "Just exactly like you," Benjamin confirmed. "Cold, scared, and thinking nobody in the world cared what happened to me. But I was wrong, and so are you." The ride to the ranch was slow and careful, with Lucy bundled in front of Benjamin on his horse, wrapped in both his coat and a blanket he kept in his saddlebags. As they rode, he told her about that night 5 years ago when Marcus had found him behind the jail. "Mr. Marcus really gave you his own bed?" Lucy asked in wonder. "His own bed," Benjamin confirmed. "And he slept on the couch for 3 weeks until we could get another bed brought in. That's the kind of man he is, Lucy. The kind who sees a child in need and doesn't hesitate to help." Marcus was sitting by the fire reading when Benjamin entered the house carrying Lucy, who had fallen asleep during the ride. One look at the situation told the older man everything he needed to know. Without a word, he stood and began preparing. "Mrs. Rodriguez is visiting her sister in town," Marcus said quietly. "But I can get some soup heated and find some clean clothes that'll fit her. She can have the guest room." Benjamin looked at his adopted father with deep gratitude and love. "Pa, she's been out there for 2 days. Her father threw her out after her mother died." Marcus's jaw tightened with familiar anger at such cruelty, but his voice remained gentle as he looked down at the sleeping child. "Then she's home now. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." As they had done for Benjamin years before, Marcus and Benjamin worked together to care for Lucy. They warmed soup, found suitable clothes, and prepared a comfortable room with a fire burning cheerfully in the fireplace. When Lucy woke, she stared around in wonder at the clean, warm space. "This is all for me," she whispered, echoing Benjamin's words from years past. "All for you." Marcus confirmed with a smile. "You're safe now, Lucy. You'll never have to sleep in the cold again." Over the following days, Lucy began to thrive in the warmth and security of the Circle T Ranch. Like Benjamin before her, she threw herself into helping with chores, desperate to prove her worth and earn her place. But Marcus and Benjamin were patient, showing her that love wasn't something she had to earn, but something that was freely given. "She reminds me of someone," Marcus said one evening as they watched Lucy help feed the chickens, her face bright with joy at having useful work to do. Benjamin smiled. "Yeah, she reminds me of someone too. Someone who used to think he was worthless until a certain rancher showed him different." A week later, the territorial circuit judge arrived in Dusty Ridge for his quarterly court session. Marcus had petitioned for guardianship of Lucy, just as he had done for Benjamin years before, But this time, there was an unexpected complication. Lucy's father, Tom Morrison, had sobered up enough to realize what he had done, and he appeared in court demanding his daughter back. Standing before Judge Harrison, he painted himself as a grieving widower who had made a mistake in a moment of overwhelming sorrow. "Your Honor," Morrison pleaded, "I was out of my mind with grief over my wife's death. I never meant to turn the girl out permanently. She belongs with her real father, not with strangers." Marcus felt his heart sink as he watched the judge consider Morrison's words. Legal precedent usually favored blood relatives, even flawed ones, over adoptive families. But then Benjamin stood up in the courtroom gallery. "Your Honor," Benjamin said respectfully. "May I say something?" Judge Harrison, who remembered Benjamin's case from years before, nodded. "Go ahead, son." Benjamin's voice was steady and strong as he addressed the court. "Your Honor, I know what it's like to be thrown away by someone who was supposed to love me. I know what it's like to think you're worthless, to believe that nobody in the world cares if you live or die." He looked directly at Tom Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, I don't doubt that you love your daughter. But love isn't just a feeling, sir. Love is action. Love is sacrifice. Love is choosing to put someone else's needs before your own, especially when they can't protect themselves." The courtroom was silent as Benjamin continued. Lucy was dying out there in the cold, not just from the weather, but from despair. She thought she was nothing but a burden, something to be thrown away when times got hard. "That's a wound that goes deeper than the body, sir. That's a wound to the soul." Morrison's face had gone pale as Benjamin spoke, the full weight of his abandonment of his daughter becoming clear. "Marcus Thompson didn't just give me shelter 5 years ago," Benjamin said, his voice filled with emotion. "He gave me back my belief that I was worth saving. He taught me that real strength isn't about avoiding hardship. It's about facing it together as a family." Judge Harrison was quiet for a long moment before speaking. "Mr. Morrison, your daughter has been thriving in the Thompson household. She's healthy, happy, and secure. Are you prepared to provide that same level of stability and care?" Morrison looked down at his hands, his voice barely audible. I don't know, Your Honor. I thought I was, but listening to that young man, maybe Lucy deserves better than I can give her right now." The judge's decision was swift and final. Temporary guardianship would go to Marcus Thompson, with the understanding that Tom Morrison could petition for visitation rights once he had demonstrated sobriety and stability for at least 1 year. As they left the courthouse, Morrison approached Benjamin with tears in his eyes. "Son, what you said in there, it opened my eyes to what I really did to my little girl. I'm going to get myself right, and maybe someday I can be the kind of father she deserves." Benjamin shook the man's hand. "Mr. Morrison, it's never too late to change. I hope you find your way back to being the father Lucy needs." That evening at the ranch, as the three of them sat around the dinner table, Lucy looked up from her plate with serious eyes. "Mr. Marcus, Benjamin, I heard what happened in court today. I know my pa might want me back someday, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, you'll always be my real family. You're the ones who chose to love me when I needed it most." Marcus reached over to ruffle her hair affectionately. "Lucy, families aren't just made by blood. They're made by choice, by love, by the decision to stand together no matter what comes." Later that night, as Benjamin tucked Lucy into her warm, comfortable bed, she looked up at him with curious eyes. "Benjamin, do you think there are other kids out there like we were? Cold and scared and thinking nobody cares?" Benjamin smiled, remembering asking Marcus a similar question years before. "I'm sure there are, Lucy. What can we do to help them?" "Well," Benjamin said thoughtfully, "someday when I'm older and have my own place, I want to make sure there's always room for children who need help. And maybe you can help me do that." "I'd like that," Lucy said sleepily. "I'd like to help other kids find warm beds and people who care about them." A year later, the Circle T Ranch welcomed its third orphan child, a 12-year-old boy named David whose parents had died in a mining accident. The pattern continued over the following years, with Marcus, Benjamin, and Lucy working together to provide homes for children who had nowhere else to go. By the time Benjamin turned 21, the Circle T had become known throughout the territory as a place of refuge and hope. Children who had been abandoned, orphaned, or abused found their way to Marcus Thompson's ranch, where they learned that families were built on love, not just blood. Benjamin never forgot that cold night when Marcus had given him his own bed and changed his life forever. As he grew into manhood, he carried that lesson with him, showing the same kindness to others that have once saved his own life. On his 21st birthday, as Benjamin prepared to claim his own section of ranch land that Marcus had deeded to him, he stood on the porch looking out over the property that had become home to so many lost children. "What are you thinking about, son?" Marcus asked, joining him in the evening air. "About how different my life could have been if you hadn't stopped that night 5 years ago. If you hadn't cared enough to give a freezing child your own bed." Marcus smiled, his hair now silver, but his spirit as strong as ever. "Benjamin, that night changed my life just as much as it changed yours. You taught me that the greatest wealth a man can have isn't money or land or cattle, it's the love of a family, even if that family is one you choose rather than one you're born into." Benjamin nodded, understanding completely. "Pa, I want to keep doing what we've been doing. I want my place to be a refuge for kids who need help, just like this one has been. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, son. After all, kindness is the best legacy anyone can leave behind." As the stars came out over the Montana sky, Benjamin reflected on the chain of kindness that had changed so many lives. A rancher had chosen compassion over indifference, giving up his own comfort to save a freezing child. That child had grown up to extend the same kindness to others, and those others would someday do the same for the next generation. The boy who had once shivered in the cold behind a jail, convinced that he was worthless and unwanted, was now a man ready to spend his life proving to other children that they mattered, that they deserved warmth and love and hope. And it all began with one simple act of kindness, a rancher giving his bed to a child who needed it more than he did. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories from the American frontier. This tale of Benjamin, Lucy, and Marcus shows us that the greatest gift we can give another person is the knowledge that they matter, that they're worth saving. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to join us for more emotional journeys that prove how one act of kindness can change not just one life, but generations of lives. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that they deserve warmth, safety, and love. No matter what their circumstances, the frontier taught us that families are built not just on blood, but on the choice to care for one another through life's coldest nights.